Chapter 1201 Sonic. Purple light with hallucinogenic power was released from one of Centipede King's bodies, and the entire cavern was a nauseating and stomach-churning purple. Even though the illusion was lifted, the sight of this light still made people dizzy. Zhongyue's three knew that if they continued like this, they would still be affected by the Centipede King's illusion, so the three decisively isolated the light from the outside world. However, in doing so, losing their sight would also greatly weaken their combat power. Jinyuanzi, if it doesn't work, let's escape first. We can't deal with this thing. Han Shanzhua shouted. They weren't Zatoichi, what were they going to fight with now as if they were blind? Zhongyue's expression was terribly grave. If he gave up, then he would only be able to unleash the Reaper of Love and completely destroy this area. Even the Centipede King, whose ability index was as high as 20,000 points, could not resist the killing power of the strongest human weapon. Only what consequences would arise from unleashing the Reaper of Love in this mysterious land no one knew, and the contaminated area would be completely turned into a forbidden zone, and the underground Yuan stone veins would also be abandoned. The situation is not that bad. Right at this moment, Zhang Yi's voice rang in the ears of the three. That fellow, it doesn't look like it's suffering that much. The strike just now also weakened its aura. The three of them, Zhongyue, were very surprised. Li Changgong asked, on what basis did you judge that? The corner of Zhang Yi's mouth curled into a smile. Just based on the fact that its attacks now are not as strong as before. The three could sense that the Centipede King's attack had not stopped, and had been firing energy cannons to attack the three. However, that attack disappeared in midair without coming close. Without a doubt, it was blocked by Zhang Yi using everything under heaven. You can see it in action? Zhang Yi said, I can't see the present, but I can see the future. Hope arose within the Zhongyue trio. Well then, what we have to do is for you to command. Li Changgong couldn't even help but sigh inwardly. He couldn't help but think, if it wasn't a point-to-point duel between him and Zhang Yi that day, but rather a life-and-death struggle, what kind of outcome would it have been? Although his supernatural powers were pulling full weight in terms of attack, Zhang Yi had shown a more comprehensive strength in the middle of today's battle to conquer Centipede King's centipede. Zhang Yi said, well then, it's settled. Jinyuanzi, Luya, the two of you don't hold back from now on, use all means to hold back. I will find an opportunity to create an opportunity for Go Chen. You don't have to think about anything, Go Chen, when I tell you to strike, you just directly strike your sword. Remember, if you want to win now, you can't have any hesitation. 100% trust in me is a must. Zhongyue immediately said, good. Han Shanzhua, old iron, no problem. Li Changgong nodded as well after hesitating for a moment. Then I'll trust you with my life. Zhang Yi, you must act carefully and not recklessly. Don't worry. Zhang Yi said indifferently. He was able to see the trajectory of his surroundings, and in the time of 2 seconds, he had a clear picture of the flow of everything. The Centipede King that had been split into two at this moment had indeed weakened its attack power compared to before. Zhang Yi's heart had a bold guess. The Centipede King possessed two sources. So after it was split into two, both of its bodies were the main body, but its power was also weakened. It didn't seem so tough for Zhang Yi's everything under heaven to block its attack. Therefore, Zhang Yi did not rush Zhongyue and Han Shanzhua into action. He first contacted the people in Spirit Guardian's shadow space. Xinxin, are you guys there? The people in shadow space were certainly paying attention to this thrilling battle, and they were equally tense inside. Hearing Zhang Yi's voice, Yan Xinxin and Zhou Qir's few people hurriedly said, we're here. Is there anything we need to help? Zhang Yi said, this guy doesn't have eyes, can we tell what exactly it relies on to see us? Encyclopedia Yan Xinxin gave the answer. Although it is impossible to tell its species, since it is a subterranean creature, there are no more than the following ways to recognize objects. The first is to utilize sound waves like bats. Second, its photoreceptor cells, where the skin can then receive a light source, but that's usually a means of identification for lower-level creatures. Third, sound. Fourth, odor. Yang Xinqin analyzed one by one and gave to Zhang Yi her opinion. The Centipede King is already a high-level creature, possessing a high level of intelligence. Judging from its fighting style, the possibility of recognizing it through sonic feedback as well as sound is the highest. Zhang Yi said, "It can't just make us blind, is there any way to also make it unable to determine our position?" Zhang Yi blocked the Centipede King's attack alone while calmly communicating with Xinqin and the others. Everything under heaven's thousands of dimensional gates formed a huge barrier, layered in front of Zhang Yi's several people. It was extremely difficult for Centipede King's attack at this moment to break a single doors. Yang Xinqin immediately replied, "This is simple, I have a sound wave emitting device here, so I only need to detect whether the Centipede King has emitted sound waves or not, and then I can make a jamming wave accordingly to influence its judgment." Zhang Yi said, "Alright then, I'll buy time, you start." As for the sound, this was much better. Zhang Yi first had Zongyue's trio isolate the sound from the outside world, and then turned on the amplification device of the combat suit, broadcasting multiple decibel frequencies of noise towards the outside world. The noise attack really made the Centipede King start to get annoyed, and it let out a screech cry from its mouth, and ejected high-energy particle rays from its mouth straight towards Zhang Yi's 4 people. "It looks like it doesn't recognize our position by sound." Zhang Yi came up with the result he wanted. A dimensional gate was destroyed by the Centipede King doors, and immediately, dozens of dimensional gates stood in front of Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi did not rush to attack, but quietly waited for Lu Karen to make the device. The Centipede King frantically attacked them, but at this time, its power was severely weakened, and it had long been inferior to before. The entire cavern trembled and was cut to pieces by it, with large swathes of yuan stone veins interspersed with rocks falling into Zhang Yi's dimensional space. In the middle of shadow space, Lu Karen quickly detected the sound waves of the outside world, and indeed, it allowed her to capture the waves emitted by the Centipede King. Just need to create the corresponding jamming waves. This kind of thing was nothing more than a piece of cake for Lu Karen. Doing so was akin to using bright light to cause someone to go blind. After a short minute of time passed, Lu Karen contacted Zhang Yi excitedly, "Brother, I'm done." "Good." Zhang Yi reached out and an arm was revealed amongst his shadow, handing him a very large sonic emission device. Chapter 1202 Killing the Enemy. Zhang Yi thought about it and directly put the device behind his back before launching it. Zhang Yi could not feel the sound wave emission as it was beyond the range of human reception. But after the machine was launched, Zhang Yi immediately felt a brief stiffness in Centipede King's movements. It was a feeling of helplessness that came with the sudden loss of vision. Just like the 3 of Zongyue just now. Sure enough, it worked. The corner of Zhang Yi's mouth lifted into a smug smile. Compared to other creatures, the reason why humans were able to become all living things was because they knew how to use tools. "You can do it now. It is now as blind as all of you." Zhang Yi laughed derisively. The 3 of them, Zongyue, were dumbfounded. They did not expect Zhang Yi to have a toolman with him. After all, Spirit Guardian's existence had always been very low profile, and Zhang Yi wouldn't deliberately tell others about it. However, it was at this time that the value of Spirit Guardian was realized. Zongyue and Han Shanzhua, under Zhang Yi's command, immediately launched a fierce attack towards Centipede King on the left and right. It was still the same routine as before. If there were more people fighting fewer people, then a siege would be good. The tanks were responsible for frontal containment, and then created excellent opportunities for the output players. Centipede King didn't have tools to help it recognize the direction, or even because of the misalignment of the sound waves, making it completely unable to judge everything around it. It was just that when that sense of crisis approached, its 2 bodies began to fiercely counterattack out of instinct. The 2 500-meter-long bodies vibrated crazily, and then high-energy particle light shot wildly around like searchlights. But the embarrassing problem came. Due to panic, one of its bodies actually hit its other body. Zongyue and Han Shanzhua were ecstatic, and in their hearts, they had even more respect for Zhang Yi, while striking without mercy. Zhong Yue transformed into a rock giant and blasted his fist fiercely into the ground, plunging it deep into the earth as if it was thrusting into rotten mud. Ka-ching! A giant sword made of hard rock appeared in Zhong Yue's hand. He held a shield in his left hand, and with his right hand, he raised the giant sword to slash Centipede King's left side of his body. Han Shanzhua rose up in the air, his sharp claws grabbing at the body on the right side. Screech! The Centipede King was able to sense the approaching danger and frantically twisted its body to resist. Han Shanzhua and Zhong Yue's attacks landed on its body, leaving horrifying wounds, while themselves being shaken away by the Centipede King's desperate counterattack. They watched as the injuries rapidly recovered on the Centipede King's body. Li Changgong, get ready and remember to listen to my orders clearly. Zhang Yi reached out and unfolded the dimensional gate in front of Li Changgong. Li Changgong nodded even though he couldn't see anything. His right hand gripped that long sword tightly, and powerful supernatural energy lingered around him. Centipede King went crazy at this moment. It was like a person who was suddenly poked and blinded. Helplessness and fear filled its heart. Zhong Yue and Han Shanzhua, under Zhang Yi's command, held back with it. Afterward, Zhang Yi gave an order, Li Changgong, go. Without the slightest hesitation, Li Changgong directly stepped into the middle of Zhang Yi's dimensional space. Teleport. Under Zhang Yi's command, Li Changgong unleashed his 6 realms without distance. Zhang Yi adjusted the direction for Li Changgong, who was now positioned right above the head of the Centipede King's left body. Slash it down now. Zhang Yi said loudly. Li Changgong was like a blind man, but he was also able to feel the Centipede King's terrifying aura, as well as the raging energy that filled the entire crypt when he fought back to the death. However, he chose to believe. So he gripped the hilt of his sword with both hands and leapt down from the air. Ah! My thoughts cut everything, nothing could not be fought, and wherever the blade passed, all targets would be turned into 2 halves. Zhang Yi wasn't sure how many sources the Centipede King had, but if he chopped down from the center, there wouldn't be a problem, would there? The huge sword slashed straight down from the head of the Centipede King, and a thin line slowly emerged right in the center of its body. Green blood filled the air, and then, there was a poof. There was a loud explosion. Like the opening of a reservoir, a large amount of blood surged out like a waterfall, spraying on the 3 of Zhong Yue's bodies. Li Changgong instantly turned into a small green man, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he loudly asked Zhang Yi, Chaos. How was it? Did you kill it? Zhang Yi watched the 2 halves of the mountain-like body slowly fall down and said, It looks like it was killed. However, there's still one more head. The moment those 2 pieces of flesh and blood collapsed, the other body of the Centipede King let out an extremely mournful wail. Then in front of the crowd, it twisted its head and unexpectedly prostrated itself on the ground and swiftly swam towards the distance. It's running away! Zhang Yi shouted. The Centipede King was no longer capable of maintaining the illusion, so Zhang Yi told the crowd to hurry up and unshield the light to chase after it. He himself even took a step out and arrived at the top of the Centipede King's head, sprang out one void bullet after another from his dual guns to intercept the Centipede King's path. However, the Centipede King's hard armor defense was indeed strong enough to withstand Zhang Yi's attacks, wailing in pain as it swam towards the crater in the distance. Although Zhang Yi desperately wanted to stop it from escaping, but if this big guy wanted to leave, Zhang Yi alone really couldn't stop it. By the time Li Changgong and the 3 of them arrived, it had already plunged into the middle of the resurrected volcano and drilled its way into the sticky, burning magma. The few people who arrived were dumbfounded. Han Shanzhua immediately shot a demon crow wave, boom. With a sound, the entire hill was completely blown apart. But what followed was only an even greater eruption of magma. Scarlet magma surged into the entire crypt like blood, and it was still bubbling out from the deeper parts of the earth. The scorching heat was simply unbearable. Even though the 4 people all had means of defense on them, they could never be able to drill into the magma like the Centipede King. Still no way to kill it? Zhong Yue's gaze was cold as he clenched his fists. A 20,000 point ability index mutant beasts, once it survived, it would definitely become a major problem for Xinjiang region in the future. But right now, any means they had were no longer helpful. This was underground, not a human domain. There's indeed no better way, we've done our best. Zhang Yi's expression was very calm. He had done everything within his ability, even if the mission was not completely accomplished, he was able to accept it. Now he was considering how to mine the Yuan stone veins as much as possible and then collect them into his dimensional space. After all, if the Centipede King escaped, it would be difficult to come over next time. But just at this time, Zhang Yi received a strange fluctuation. Yang Xinxin's call suddenly came. "Brother, Totoro." It suddenly stirred up as if it wanted to go out. A look of dismay flashed across Zhang Yi's eyes. Immediately afterward, as if he thought of something, he immediately said, "Let it out and take a look." Chapter 1203 The Correct Usage of Totoro. The Totoro was a strange creature that Zhang Yi had picked up on top of Star Island. According to Zhokir's tests, its genetic sequence was only about 30% similar to that of a human. This was a very odd thing, as it looked like a mammal with such a low percentage of gene sequence similarity. After all, both humans and bananas have 50% similarity in their gene sequences. Zhang Yi and Zhokir blamed it on genetic mutation. But it had been half a year since they brought it back from Star Island, but they had not been able to figure out what secrets it had in it. Obviously, according to the tests, it possessed super strong supernatural abilities, and purely in terms of the quality of its supernatural energy, it was roughly at the level of 9,600 points. However, its actual combat power was very weak, and it was only able to rely on its instincts to defend itself. Coupled with its cute appearance and ability to play the flute, it once made Zhang Yi believe that it was a mutated human. It wasn't until today that its abnormal reaction made Zhang Yi remember that this fellow might have some special knowledge about the underground. Could it be that it is an underground creature? Zhang Yi's heart was a little curious. Or maybe it's a miner or something like that, mutated from exposure to the mysteries of the Misty Valley? Regardless of those, Zhang Yi decided to release it to give it a try. Soon, the Totoro jumped out from amongst his shadow. When the three of them, Zongyue, saw this scene, their eyelids couldn't help but jump. Even Li Changgong, who was also a space mutant, was somewhat jealous of Zhang Yi's ability. Storing space, and space that could store living creatures, when utilized in the military realm as well as in group battles, it was simply a god-level skill. For example, right now they were in the depths of tens of thousands of meters underground, even for an epsilon like Li Changgong. If they did not receive enough supplies, once there was a situation where their combat suits were torn or there was not enough oxygen, their lives would be in danger during the battle. After Totoro jumped out of shadow space, a burning bright light was released from his eyes that were originally always dull. The feeling was like a civet cat that had smelled a mouse, its ears perked up. It sniffled vigorously, and then directly jumped towards the crater of the volcano, which was still gurgling with hot lava. Rolling magma on it surprisingly cannot cause any damage. It wandered in the magma, and then fiercely stuck in, and then two big furry claws madly digging down. Within a short time, the crater was dug open by it into a huge hole. It wasn't a huge underground volcano, and it didn't look like the scale of the magma was particularly large. The Totoro dug a passageway, then turned back and howled out at Zhang Yi. "Is this to let me follow it over?" Zhang Yi could probably understand what the Totoro meant. Zongyue said to Zhang Yi, "Chaos, are these your men?" Zhang Yi replied, "It looks like it can help us find the Centipede King centipede that escaped. Let's go chase it." Instead of answering Zongyue's question, he changed to a new topic. Han Shanzhua frowned. "Is it reliable?" Zhang Yi spread his hands and said, "I can only say that we can give it a try. How exactly reliable it is depends on the situation." Zongyue said in a deep voice, "Chase it. Right now, while it is seriously injured, the four of us can kill it by fighting one. If we wait until it recovers and continues to grow by devouring Yuan stone veins, it will be very difficult for us to have this chance again." Without wasting too much time, the few people decided to chase it over together. Zhong Yue attached heavy supernatural armor to all four of them, and Zhang Yi also unfolded his abilities at full strength, and then the four of them followed the Totoro all the way along the huge cavern it had dug out. In the middle of the abyss, the rampaging Earth Centipede colony seemed to have sensed the fall of the Centipede Queen and the sorrowful cry of the King Centipede, so they pounced even more maniacally to kill all these invaders from the surface. The humans had underestimated the numbers of the Earth Centipede horde, and even the legions of top mutants from the four major districts were subjected to an extremely great oppressive force. Flower tangled with a giant purple Earth Centipede with 9,800 points of the supernatural ability index, against waves, sharp teeth and claws tearing through the body, and the battle caused the rock walls in the middle of the abyss to constantly shatter. A large number of yuan stone veins were exposed from the rock walls, and blue light lingered around the Earth Centipede colony. However, their existence was concealed under the dazzling light of the Deng Shintong. After a great battle, one of Flower's wings was torn apart, and several hideous and terrifying wounds were left on its body. But it had also bitten off the Earth Centipede's source area, dangling its remains with a ferocious face as it flew back crookedly. The injured beast was full of ferocity, and around it, not to mention the Earth Centipede fearing its power, even the mutants from the other regions looked at it with trepidation. Is this the legendary house cat that has devoured the source of God and will be promoted to Epsilon sooner or later? Among the 36 heavenly spirits, the heavenly wound star Zhou Haojie sucked in a breath of cool air, inwardly in awe and envy of Flower. After all, not everyone was as lucky as it was to meet a master as good as Zhang Yi. The injuries that Flower had sustained were not light, but with the gluttony ability user, it was able to recover its supernatural abilities and physique by eating. Therefore, it pressed on the huge Earth Centipede corpse, and its sharp teeth click 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 bit through the hard armor, and began to devour its flesh and blood and origin to recover itself. On the other side, Liang Yu, Uncle Yu and Fatty Su were also fighting hard. This was the first time that they were not fighting under Zhang Yi's protection. Everything had to rely on themselves. Even Fatty Su, who was accustomed to being a wimp, had his ferocity aroused in his heart by the sight of blood. When a person was discharged from the army, his primitive killing instinct would slowly awaken. Instead of fighting individually, he, Uncle Yu and Liang Yu worked together. Fatty Su was in charge of controlling the field, and then joined Uncle Yu in long-range attacks. With the weapons provided by Liu Karen, they were able to utilize a combat power that was higher than their supernatural ability index. The sophistication of their weapons was such that even the mutants from other regions couldn't help but be surprised after seeing them. Obviously, it was no longer a mere product of modernized military industry, but a good product created by advanced mutants with mechanical manufacturing abilities. Liang Yu rushed at the front, behind her were Fatty Su's Blizzard, and Uncle Yu's Gun Sniper. And she had already adapted to the ability of the hook and rope, constantly running through the rock walls of the abyss. The dragon's roar in her hand was wrapped in supernatural energy like blue smoke, and then she flew and swept past one Earth Centipede after another. There were no flashy moves or earth-shattering swords, just a flash of blue light in midair, and the source of an Earth Centipede was broken. However, the battle did not always go smoothly. Soon, Liang Yu was also targeted by a powerful Earth Centipede. It appeared from amongst the shadows, and a black ray of light shot towards the back of Liang Yu's head. Chapter 1204 Metal Frenzy. Sensing the crisis, Liang Yu nimbly rolled his body a few times on the rock wall, dodging the direct shot of the energy ray. But that energy ray came after her, to slice off Liang Yu's head. She had to stomp on the rock wall with both feet, using her strength to leap upwards by 5 or 6 meters. At the same time, she also saw the giant Earth Centipede crawling out from the middle of the gloomy cave. Liang Yu's mouth exhaled a white mist, which unexpectedly spat out a meter long like an arrow, condensing and not dispersing. The Qi Sect's ability would be able to gather the Qi within a person's body and then turn it into a powerful weapon. Come on! Liang Yu gripped Dragon's Roar with one hand, Qi energy surged madly from her limbs and blue smoke vaporized from the soles of her feet. She buried her head low, then ran along the rock wall towards the Earth Centipede at a speed faster than the Earth Centipede. The battlefield was incomparably tragic, and there were killings everywhere. There were even mutant casualties already. Fortunately, they were well prepared, and among the various mutant teams, there were healing mutants present. On the side of the heavenly constellations, the heavenly manifestation star in Yute opened the needle pouch he carried with him, and hundreds of silver needles were played out in his hands. These silver needles were both weapons and could also be shot into the bodies of friendly troops to heal them. On the side of the northeast 5 immortals, White Immortal Wei Shufan was a kind aunt in her 40s. She carries a green bag with her, and when she reaches into it, she is able to sprinkle out a sky full of medicinal powder. Poisons killed enemies, antidotes saved lives, and they were also able to boost the combat power of teammates. On the Northwest region side, Earth War God Chi Yuquin's ability was the extremely rare trait system ability of transforming into a plant. Earth nourishes all things. He could make his body transform into a huge tree, rooting itself on top of a rock wall and then growing a long, thick branch. Drawing on the power of the earth, he then spread out pollen to heal his teammates. Relying on tacit cooperation, their front and back formations were clearly separated, and although the battle was very strenuous, no one was killed in action. On the side of the mutant army, there were a few mutants and mutant beasts that performed most amazingly. There was no need to mention Jiangnan region's Flower, whose formidable combat strength and ability to tear apart a giant earth centipede with his bare hands was awe-inspiring. In the northwest regions, Immovable Fortress Battle Formation, as well as the 36 Heavenly Spirits Battle Formation of the 36 Heavenly Spirits Congregation showed great discipline. The 4 top mutants, paired with firepower supremacy, Chen Jiahao launched a merciless bombardment against the Earth Centipede colony. The Sky War God among the 5 extreme gods of war, Cheng Lanlan, and the Mortal War God, Xiao Liu, even displayed very strong single combat abilities. Xiao Liu's abilities did not look outstanding. The ability of Metal Frenzy was to magnify everything. Originally, this ability was only recognized by the Northwest Region military as a supportive ability, designating him as a support in the mutant team. However, no one had expected that Xiao Liu had developed this ability into a powerful supernatural that combined offense and defense with his amazing talent. He took off a grenade from his clothes and sneered as he bit down on the pole ring with his morose white teeth. The increased power from Metal Frenzy was attached on top of the grenade, and that grenade quickly began to glow like a miniature sun held in the palm of his hand. Xiao Liu's left arm muscles bulged high as he threw this grenade at the distant Earth Centipede colony like a baseball. A few seconds later, a dazzling white light accompanied by a deafening ringing sound exploded there. In an instant, hundreds of Earth Centipedes were blown up in a flurry of blood and flesh, and even the Earth Centipede in the source area was directly blown to ashes. Almost everyone who was able to appear here was a heavenly pride of the 4 major military regions, an existence that could not be found among tens of millions of people. They all wanted to prove their strength in front of the others, refusing to be the companion of the others. But just at this chaotic time, there were also some people who moved differently. Qing Lanlan's gaze always looked at the people of Jiangnan region if at all. Skimming over Flower, Uncle Yu and Fatty Su, it finally landed on Liang Yu. The last martial arts master of Huashu Kingdom, Liang Yu. The corner of her mouth slowly hooked up in a dangerous smile. On top of the battlefield, Liang Yu was killing the enemy very vigorously. After killing each Earth Centipede, she would string the corpses of the Earth Centipedes together with hooks and ropes. Gradually, the chains behind her were already strung with the corpses of powerful Earth Centipedes. As a strong person, she had always believed that she should be the forceful one in the team. This had always been the case before joining Zhang Yi's team. However, after entering the shelter, she did not expect the situation to change so quickly. Zhang Yi's strength had risen too quickly, and now it had reached a point where she was out of her reach. After Flower had absorbed the source of God, she had also clearly pulled away from the others, and was bound to become an Epsilon-level mutant beasts in the not-too-distant future. Even Lu Karen, Zhou Kir, and Yang Xinxin showed an increasingly powerful potential. Gradually, Liang Yu, who was a pure martial arts fighter, was in a rather awkward situation. She had been protecting her partners at home, but in reality, Zhang Yi had basically eliminated all the dangers in the shelter, which always made Liang Yu feel uncomfortable. She was not willing to just be Zhang Yi's martial arts teacher. So with this rare opportunity today, she secretly vowed in her heart that she would take advantage of it to rapidly improve herself. As long as she was able to kill more and stronger earth centipedes and hunt for their origin, her strength would also be enhanced. The only way to advance to Epsilon, so far, was the source of God. She didn't dare to think about that kind of thing. Yet in her eyes, such a boundary might not be absolutely unbreakable. Just by virtue of her thousand-hardened flesh. Ho! Liang Yu gripped Dragon's Roar with both hands and killed the giant earth centipede close to her. The giant earth centipede was incomparably sensitive as it snaked and crawled along the rock wall and immediately fired an energy blast. Liang Yu didn't attack recklessly. She knew that she couldn't beat this powerful mutant beasts in a pure fight of strength. And martial artists, with not only brute strength, but also brains and skills. She nimbly leapt on the rock wall, dodging the attacks of this giant earth centipede, as a series of violent explosions came from behind her. Those were the rocks that had been blasted apart by the earth centipede, interspersed with a large amount of blue veins of yuan stone falling down below the abyss. Liang Yu's left hand took out 3 absorption bombs from his backpack and threw them at the earth centipede like darts. When the earth centipede saw a weapon coming, its body twisted nimbly and directly dodged the 3 bombs. Liang Yu's hand movements did not stop at all, throwing out 3 bombs again with her backhand. Between the tugging and pulling of both sides, a dozen of attached bombs were thrown out. Seeing Liang Yu's attack fail, the earth centipede unexpectedly raised its head towards it in triumph and let out a provocative cry. Cluck screech dashed the corner of Liang Yu's mouth slowly hooked up as she lightly opened her red lips, explode. In the next moment, the bombs attached to the rock walls around the earth centipede instantly exploded. The rocks around the earth centipede's body rapidly peeled off, and its body attached to the rocks was instantly destabilized, along with a large number of rocks falling towards the bottom. Chapter 1205, Chasing the Dead to the North. Taking advantage of the earth centipede's unsteady body, Liang Yu did not hesitate and rushed towards it with his long sword in hand. Once the earth centipede's huge body was unsteady in its center of gravity, it would be difficult to recover in midair. It desperately twisted its body, trying to use its limbs and feet to grab onto the nearby rock wall. But along with it, there were also a large number of blasted rocks, so that all it grabbed were all broken rocks. Liang Yu took the opportunity to leap down. Its center door was wide open, and Liang Yu's chest was pierced by a sword. The steel-like body couldn't stop Liang Yu's sword that was waiting to strike. Screech! The earth centipede let out an agonizing cry of grief. It actually struggled to twist its body, knocked away Liang Yu, and then grasped a protrusion on the rock wall, and then quickly climbed in along a cave. Liang Yu didn't even think that this earth centipede's vitality was so tenacious. That hit just now had opened up one large opening in its chest, which according to human proportions, was equivalent to opening up a fist-sized gap in its chest. It was surprising that it still had the strength to act. Because of this, Liang Yu's gaze became more and more stern. The origin of this earth centipede was definitely very strong, although it was not as strong as the monster that Flower had killed, it was still at the level of captain. She would definitely not let it go. Liang Yu carried Dragon's Roar straight to that cave. Densely packed earth centipede climbed over from all directions of the rock wall, eyeing Liang Yu intently, Screech and screaming threateningly at her. These twisted and huge bugs looked particularly terrifying, but Liang Yu would not be afraid of anything after her will to fight came up. This kind of small minion, she didn't put it in her eyes at all. Shoo! The blue chi transformed into the sharpest sword, directly slicing all the earth centipedes that blocked the front path neatly, and those huge-sized earth centipedes shattered into piece after piece as they fell into the abyss. Liang Yu rushed into the passageway. The intelligent system of the combat suit would help it chase after that earth centipede based on the blood residue in the air. Uncle Yu, who was not far away, saw this scene and shouted anxiously, "Mr. Liang, don't pursue the poor enemy. However, the battle here was too noisy, and the signals from deep underground were also affected by various factors, so they couldn't be effectively conveyed over for a time. He was also only able to watch Liang Yu go after the severely injured Earth Centipede. Fatty Sue was holding 2 submachine guns in both hands, and at this point, he was already killing with a light in his eyes. The powerful Earth Centipede had all been cleaned up by Flower and Liang Yu before, and the ones around them were all small monsters that he and Uncle Yu were responsible for cleaning up. Thus there wasn't much trouble encountered. It feels like the battle is just like playing an arcade, it's pretty good. Uncle Yu glanced at him. Now that Mr. Liang has gone after the Earth Centipede, let's go over and support them as well. Fatty Sue subconsciously looked into the distance when he heard this. That was the direction Liang Yu had left. Above the rock wall, Earth Centipedes were densely packed. The smallest ones were 7 or 8 meters in size, and there was even no shortage of monsters that were dozens of meters in size. He swallowed his saliva. This is not something we can handle, right? Uncle Yu also had a headache. Zhang Yi had said when he left that they shouldn't separate because the battle here was very vicious. Liang Yu was on top of the fight and went after the prey alone. If they didn't follow them there, what if Liang Yu encountered any danger? But reality did not give Uncle Yu a chance to worry. Because soon he realized that after Liang Yu left, trouble rushed towards them. A large number of Earth Centipedes rushed towards Uncle Yu and Fatty Sue. This aura could be different from the miscellaneous fish they had dealt with before. Fatty Sue's face instantly went white, and his entire being sobered up quite a bit. It was fine to let him rub the situation out, but letting him fight the main force would be too difficult. Fortunately, although Liang Yu had gone after the Earth Centipede, Flower was still there. It had already eaten a large portion of that giant Earth Centipede with an ability index as high as 9800. And the injuries on its body were slowly recovering, and the aura on its body was even more menacing, making the mutants from the several surrounding regions not dare to approach. Flower certainly did not forget Zhang Yi's instructions. Its cold eyes like an evil god just swept the group of Earth Centipede, and in the next moment, it opened its mouth, and an atomic spitting breath directly penetrated through thousands of meters of space, directly shooting the group of Earth Centipede to smithereens. Fatty Sue clapped his hands in excitement. Wonderful, wonderful. Flower squinted at him. Although no words were spoken, the meaning was all inside the eyes. You nerd, not a bit of talent. Fatty Sue scratched his head in some embarrassment. It's not that I'm a rookie, but my teammates are too fierce and don't give me a chance to make a move. Flower spewed out a stream of hot air from inside its nostrils, almost blowing Fatty Sue out of the air. Its gaze looked into the distance in the direction Liang Yu had left, frowning slightly. However, right now, it had no way to go over and help Liang Yu, because the Earth Centipedes around it were still appearing in a steady stream. If it left, there would be a loophole in this direction, and the mutants from the other regions would definitely die or be injured. Thinking of Liang Yu's strength, it then decided to let Liang Yu solve the problem over there by itself. So Flower let out a roar and once again pounced on a bizarre and twisted Earth Centipede that had just crawled out of the ground. Liang Yu was in the middle of the passageway, like a snowy silver fox, ambling low and quickly chasing after it. The combat suit provided lighting equipment that could provide her with a limited range of light. The bloodstains left on the ground became the best signposts. In the course of the chase, she was one person and one sword, slashing countless monsters that blocked the way. This giant Earth Centipede obviously had a special status amongst all the kingdoms of Earth Centipedes, so there was no second Earth Centipede above captain level. Liang Yu had a smooth journey, killing them as if they were chopping them up, and finally caught up with the Earth Centipede that had its chest penetrated. Its source had already been destroyed, and the huge broken hole in its chest flowed out green blood like a spring. After being caught up by Liang Yu, it angrily tried to turn back to counterattack, but Liang Yu skillfully dodged its dying struggle before circling around to its back and giving it one last sword. Rumble! The huge body collapsed to the ground with a loud bang, and it died completely. A pleased smile appeared on Liang Yu's face as she carried Dragon's Roar over and started digging into the source inside its body. But before she was even halfway through digging, from one of the cave's exits came a dangerous aura. A martial artist's intuition was far superior to that of an ordinary person, and her sixth sense allowed her to sense something called killing intent. Without hesitation, she raised the long sword in her hand and pointed it there. "Who is it?" It wasn't the earth centipede that came, because the movement was too light, so light that there weren't even any footsteps in the air. When Liang Yu's words fell, 3 clapping sounds came from the direction her sword was pointing. The slender Cheng Lan Lan walked out from a hole, with a look inside her eyes that sent chills down people's backs as she stared at Liang Yu with a smile. "Good intuition,"